that process again for the next 5 years. Finance, it's a very active committee that we meet once a month. Advancement, how are we raising money for the school? Are there strategic goals in place? Data and research, are we using information from the assessments that we provide kids, and how are we applying that? What are our admission standards? Early childhood program, our academic program. Are classrooms set up? Do you have qualified teachers in there? Are they certified? All those things. Student life. What is life like for a student during the day and also after school? Personnel. Do we have everything in place with a qualified background check, blah, 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 that comes to HR? Safety, security, risk management. As we know, that's a topic that is very current now. And they look at what we have in place and they evaluate. International students, do we have everything in place to be able to accept international students? Domestic and international travel, that does apply to us. We're sending kids to Tremont here soon for 5th grade. We send 8th graders to DC. What do you guys have in place for how do you do it? So forth, and the things that do not apply, that I think some parents wish we had, is residential life. And then proprietary school, we are a non-for-profit, and then also we're not considered a special ed school, and I hope that we never have to go to online and private learning again. So, those are the standards and there's many more different bullet points per standard that we have to look at and how we do it and discuss. And then that's part of our submission of our self-study. Any questions on that as I'm coming? All right. That's
so our first impressions of our survey results. As you can see, welcoming family atmosphere, relatively affordable tuition. I think if you looked at that back slide, we're pretty competitive with some of the other private schools, but not the highest. Caring community, that exceeded everybody's expectations. I think, you need this one?
Yeah.
Okay. I think everybody here would probably agree that we are a welcoming and caring community. Relies on each other. And then this last bullet, like many schools, desire to reflect the diversity of the greater community and inclusion of all children is at odds and often misunderstood. I think, we will all admit we live in a pretty uber political world, and so definitions of words are different. And I think at the heart of this question for us is not about politics, but more about our Christian values as a Christian school. And so we'll talk more about that coming up.
I will say that the Director of Resources, her name is Sherry Burkeen with SAIS, she said it was a little bit odd that the amount of tuition was never brought up with parents or anybody else. Now she's used to dealing with schools in Atlanta and Jacksonville and Tampa and so forth all around the Southeast, but she's like, that's kind of rare. So it is very affordable, and obviously you guys are having to pay and it comes out, but that was something that we struggle with as a board and as a finance committee. We never want to increase, and we want to make it manageable and attainable for everybody, but that was something that was pointed out to us.
Okay, so who responded? The average parent response is about 40%. This next line, the 107, 180, and 108, those are our actual number of responses that we got from our parents. 43% of parents responded. That's of all both parents included, right? So really, if you double that, we had a really high percentage of parents responded. It's usually just one parent per family responding. So it seems a little low, but it's actually not. 68% of our faculty and staff responded, and then 95% of the students responded. They have very strong opinions.
It's because they were in front
They
of
also
somebody.
said it in class.
They were like, fine, we'll show you.
And the students are comprised of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
So of our faculty, you can see the breakdown of the number of teachers per division, and then how many years that they've each worked here. So our retention looks to be pretty good. And whether they had children here or not. I think that's one too.
All right. So you're going to see an M for more than expected and an L for less than expected. And one of the things that was pointed out to us again, you must have a bottom rung to the ladder. And what I mean by that, she said, and she being Kristen, she said, you know, they were lower, but not really low when you look at the percentage of people that responded this way. So when it comes to parents with our curriculum program, high academic standards, technology use, character education, facilities to support, those are all more than expected. Service learning, understanding of diversity, and global and cultural learning, those are opportunities where we can grow. And she also mentioned that K-8 schools, when it comes to service learning, those are typically lower because you don't have the opportunities to transport. And plus, seeking out opportunities with agencies, they'll say, how old are they? And so that's why we do a lot of service learning here, but we can get more into that. You're going to see as common theme, understanding of diversity, not only amongst parents, but faculty, staff, and our students as well. They recognize it. Faculty, facilities to support program, character education, variety of course offerings, and again, understanding of diversity. The students, the tech use, facilities to support, academic requirement, outside of school hours. Vanessa, what was that again?
That one, what's great about that is that's actually a positive because they're saying that the homework ratio, their requirements outside were less than expected. You know, that was a good thing that it was that way because they didn't feel like they had too much homework or outside things. So that's actually a positive, though it can seem different.
Yeah. And you also have off-campus learning and understanding of diversity. Then it comes to life and learning skills. Very little difference, but the parents, they recognize the collaboration and teamwork. One of the things that you guys get to deal with is homework. And so that's something that we're looking at. Students and parents solve the time management. And that's something that we're constantly wanting to help them. It is a process, but being able to balance all that they do, we know that when they leave here at 3:05, there's another life beyond this. And so we're constantly trying to work with them on how to balance those things. The faculty recognize resilience, written and verbal communication, leadership, and organization as being very strong in our life and learning skills. Here's what's interesting. Faculty saw creative thinking as low. The students thought it was high. So the great thing about doing this exercise is, that's an opportunity for discussion and to explore further. And then these students, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, right, this is their constant good struggle, is time management and also the self-control of being in control. Thank you. Classroom experience. You guys, care and concern, inspirational, and motivational faculty, all across the board. You can see it. Gender and racial diversity among faculty and staff. It is something that we are continually looking at, and how are we doing that? I've worked with recruiting, NEMNET recruiting for minorities. I've also reached out to FAMU, and I'm expected to have a meeting with them. How can we broaden our base for candidates? I will tell you now, it doesn't matter what color, what height, what gender, it is really hard to attract a deep pool of candidates for teaching positions. There's a shortage. And so I always remind my administrators, we're only hiring one, because we get nervous when we don't have any candidates. We have a really good track record of hiring the right people, but that is the challenge. And I will say this in being part of many webinars and discussions, that it's not just in Tallahassee. It's in New York City. It's in urban areas, which I was kind of floored by. Wow. Everybody is wanting to be able to provide racially and ethnically different teachers because we have racially and ethnically different students. And my goal would be so that kids can see themselves in a teaching role. And it's a challenge. And it's a challenge for people all over this country. And it's a challenge. That doesn't mean it can't be done, but it is a challenge for us. But it is something that we're continually working on. Because I want men, women, older, younger, all different types that are able to teach and challenge our children.
Quick question, you put some demographics on the first slide around, the mix in Tallahassee, like, is the mix of all these things consistent with like those demographics, or is it still low if you actually like look at the mix locally and what's available across the whole population?
They're right here. So 48, 34.
Yeah, the 48% white, 34% African American.
That's Tallahassee.
Yeah, yeah. The other interesting discussions when we've had discussions, it's if you're a minority candidate, they would rather, if you're choosing education, which is a ministry, a common response would be, well, I'd rather teach who I know, and I'd rather make a difference with my race. And so that's the challenge too, right? But to answer your, demographics are different in all different areas, but what I was, and again, I was kind of floored by it, it wasn't just rural schools, it was the urban schools that were having the same issue, depending on whether the demographics were same or different or what have you.
Yeah, it was more like, okay, if the local demographics are this is the pool you have, is like your mix consistent with that pool,
Right.
or is it still way off?
Yeah.
With
Way
the
off.
pool?
The pool
Okay.
is way off.
Yeah, it is. And we always like to hire teachers with experience. And what I mean by that is, well, get fresh out of college, that's not my first preference, right? We have high standards. We'd rather have someone that has experience in other classrooms before they come here. That's my ideal preference. Doesn't always work that way. So there are a lot of different factors that play into that.
Anything else on this one?
Peter, what do the credentials look like for a teacher for the school? I'm sorry, I'm ignorant in that.
No. Would you kind of just certification?
I didn't
Credentials for
question.
teachers
Just general credentials for teachers
with certification.
here.
Right, so of course you have to have the education in your field. So, if somebody has an economics degree, we're not gonna put them in a second grade classroom.
Sure.
Some people do where they take a after career kind of course, and it's 15 hours, so it's still a lot of classes that they have to take to be able to be certified. But in general, you have the degree. For us, you have the experience, and that you also go through the state. Some schools don't have the
Experience in the
teachers.
field.
Mhm.
Okay.
And some schools don't have their teachers go through state accreditation, but what we feel is important with that is that encourages continual professional development, which we want everybody to continue to grow. Some places, they don't have the money to support professional development, so, they take the experience, they take the degree, and, kind of stop there and do what they can. But what I love is that we have a very strong professional development program. So that's really kind of, once you get those ideal candidates, is the continued growth also that I think is important when we talk about certification and requirements.
Now, if somebody doesn't have a state accreditation, does Holy Comfort willing to pay for it if they have the other two things, or?
We haven't in the past because.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. We do have some funds allocated for continuous, but not enough to pick up 5 courses. That comes to about $5,000. So, that is one area that if we want to look at people with different careers who may now want to get into teaching, but currently we don't.
And I've
State's
worked,
doing a lot on that, so that's why I was asking.
and I've worked with other private schools that do not require the certification, and I love that we do. Administration, welcoming, accessible, you're gonna hear a lot from me, lots of people. Responsive to concerns, and I came across this earlier in the year, and this is what we're trying to live by, and it is listen better, try harder, and care more. And that's what we're aiming to do. And so if we don't know what's going, please share. We are not mind readers in the carpool line, but if there is a concern that we can be helpful with, that's why we're here. We want to work with you because We want what's best for your child, and if we don't know, we can't do anything. But there's always room for growth. With faculty, welcoming, accessible, communicative on school matters, that's one of the things that we really, instead of just sending the email out to all of you without notifying our teachers, I'll either sit down or we will let them know what's going on. And so sometimes we might not have time to sit down and talk. We got to communicate, but that's one thing that we are working on. And then obviously we have this theme, welcoming and accessible, but also responsive to concerns. Middle school students might share with Mrs. Vernon, and then Mrs. Vernon will listen and probably problem solve, but not necessarily go back to that individual and share what they're doing about it, because they're going to,
Or I won't change the dress code.
well, that's, yeah.
So that's like the concern of the middle schoolers are, can we get ice cream at lunch? And you change the dress code.
You will see much more by
Oh,
the
yeah.
teacher's leg.
And I
Especially the
wear
girls with the
jeans
dress
with,
code.
shredded leg.
Yeah.
You need to present the students.
Yeah, right. I can interpret some of these answers.
There you go.
Here's interesting, student support, parents, obviously, academic success and transition to the next level. Lower is physical health. Here, this is seen as here it sees in the middle school. Faculty, this is something that we're good in. Social, and this is different. This has brought kind of discussion to our guidance department and division heads. What, do we need to spend more time kind of explaining or what social emotional well-being means for kids? Us adults, we have it, but we need to spend more time talking to them about it. And then faculty, discipline and behavioral expectations. One of the things that they would like is that we don't talk to the entire group, but talk to the quote-unquote offenders. And that's something that we constantly, as teachers, we want to send a message, but to be more proactive is to have the individual conversations. Campus safety.
Yeah. So, parents, facilities and grounds safety rated high at the time of this survey. Security during athletic and other school events was rated lower. So, obviously, safety's one of our top priorities, if not the top priority. We are constantly reevaluating, constantly trying to figure out what can we do better, what are weaknesses, what, where can we strengthen things, and so, do you have any update,
Yeah, and obviously before this past week, everybody rated this very high. Now, is kind of in my letter to y'all, we kind of looked through different lenses because we saw a lot of similarities between the Covenant School and us. And one of the things I just want you to be aware of that we don't always explain is Mr. White is one person. He is the hub of our security, and he's at the center. But we also have 5 people on our maintenance team that are all over campus all day long. We have very active faculty members that are on the playgrounds, what have you, that consistently, Mr. White, can you check this out? They're overly communicative, which is what we want them to do. So there are extra eyes and ears all over this campus all day long. I know he can't be everywhere. And we're looking to potentially increasing the number of staff. But the most important thing is, and I met with faculty the other day, was we need to be diligent about being aware of all of our surroundings all the time. So when you see something, if something doesn't feel right, call them. There was a couple years ago, I heard the call and they said, yeah, there's a man walking over by the tennis courts. It was in the middle of the day. And he said, I'll check it out. It was me. Menacing looking bow tie wearing. and so I will say that because of not only last week, but because this happens, all of us have been impacted. And all of us look at things differently. I mean, I see the Jimmy John's guy get out of the car, and I'm looking at him differently because of what happens. And I hate that for us. I remember traveling with my family through Europe, and I'm like, what? And it just has impacted all of us and it's created anxiety in all of us, and it's made us try to be more aware than we, instead of just enjoying the moment. And so I say that because we have so many employees across this campus outdoors all the time, so we're constantly looking at every facet of this campus and constantly communicating with Kevin, who is phenomenal. And I would love to have him not retired, but we are in the process of interviewing. And again, we're looking at adding maybe 2 people, because it takes not just one person to replace Kevin White. And when I know more, everybody else will know more. But it is something that we're consistently looking at how we can improve, but also keep the feel of our school and not live in fear, right? And that's an ongoing thing. Someone asked, well, do you only put the money raised from Gala into this? That's a dent in what we're invested in. That's an opportunity for everybody to be a part of that. But we will invest, we will find that money, we will invest on improvements to the school no matter what. It's not just, man, we didn't raise it, so we're not going to invest in it. That's not the way that it is. So I just want you to hear that from me out on the camera.
And then I guess just a quick question is, just based on what happened last week, did Mr. White or anybody else learn anything from that would create any additional measures we weren't already thinking of, or do we feel like, we're best prepared for that scenario as we possibly can be?
It did make us look at our door options when we are replacing the doors, which will happen in June.
Okay.
So that did. And here's the hard part about security is I can't share all that we have in place with you. Why? Because here are the cold hard facts.
Well, somebody's going to take that and they're going to use it as a weakness
Correct.
against you. They're like,
Exactly.
okay, well, that's your protocol. I'm going to
Correct.
work around your protocol.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I completely understood the...
Because unfortunately, when you look at who typically carries this out, first it's a student, second it's a parent. Third, it's someone affiliated with the school in somehow, some way. Least is someone that doesn't know the school. So that's where we don't want to give our quote-unquote playbook
Right.
out to the, because if we share it with one, I don't know where that's going to go.
Right.
Well, did you know they have this? Did you know they have that? That just that compromises our safety.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. And I understand as a parent you want to know, but the hard part is it comes down to a lot of trust, and know that we have spent a lot of time, energy, and effort in creating the safest that we can possibly create.
Okay.
Peter, I got 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
Again, I know if you don't feel comfortable answering, feel free not to. My wife does the same thing to me, so. So 2 things. One, are there any other ex-military or police on campus other than Mr. White?
There are ex-military that are part of our maintenance.
Okay, cool. And then second thing, do you guys partner with either, the county or county sheriff's office or TPD to do sweeps or anything like that?
So a couple of things. We have a safety audit every year, and so that they will come and look at our plans, talk to, and see where, where's your relocation, where is this, where is that, how do you have this, how do you have that. And, the other good news is we want and encourage, we want the SWAT team to practice here.
That's what I meant by sweeps.
Doesn't happen during the day, but it is where they know the layout of our buildings very well. And we warn the church what night that may be, but that is, I'm like, yes, I would rather them know our campus and how they would respond, and they've walked through our buildings, and so we have a great relationship. We have some of our parents that are TPD and sheriff, and so we have a great relationship with law enforcement. Yes, ma'am.
On the previous slide, transportation was less than expected. Can you elaborate on that?
I'm trying to think.
Is that on
I'll
school
tell you for
campus
the
or is that
kids,
on
it's
campus?
just the buses,
Buses.
like they
The
don't,
buses.
they would like luxury coaches.
I can say that,
To be
but my kid went to the Latin
there.
forum and he was like, we're not taking the
Yeah.
Astro buses?
Correct.
Those are buses for athletics and field trips.
Yes. They can
We not
charge their
offer bus
phones
service.
in our buses.
But you Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Right, yes, so it's really, for the kids, and I think to some extent for the faculty, it's not specifically a safety issue. Like, I don't think they're worried about being unsafe in that capacity. It's just you know, that's.
You also
not
had to
great.
answer.
You also need a bottom.
Yes, right, you have
You had
to
to
answer
answer
something,
something, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's probably what.
Can I just ask one more quick
Yeah,
question
oh,
on school
absolutely.
safety? Is there an option to close the front gates?
If Kevin White were standing here, he'd say, don't do that.
Okay.
Yep. You know, if we were planning a campus on 100 acres that had this long road that came in, that might be something that you could do. The other thing is, people have said, well, you need a guard at the front. Well, and to be truly 100% successful in that, you'd have to have car checks every single day. Right. And so Kevin, he's not a proponent of that. He's like, it doesn't really deter anything. So that has been brought up. Close the gates during the day, and with the relationship with the church and as much as we have going in and out, you know, that
Right, it creates a challenge.
it does. And we do have just those access points. We do have that gate closed behind the commons.
Right.
All right.
All right, so athletics and fine arts. So parents, athletics, opportunity to participate, quality of the fine arts program, and the opportunity to participate in a variety of offerings and the co-curriculars. Pretty much across the board, the same thing. I will say, though fine arts often scores lower than athletics, it was high for us. I think one of the things that we benefited from was this building that we're in. The last time we went through accreditation and survey, this didn't exist. And so now that we have this, we have a proper place for our musicians and theater and dance and all that kind of thing. So we seem to be on the right track in terms of.
And then again, that's the reason we do this, is because we knew from our previous report and our previous experience through accreditation that we needed to make change. And so that's what, wish you were building up like that for everything, but.
Well, and Sherry had mentioned, she doesn't see that in many schools. So the fact that we had such an even balance between our arts and athletics programs was huge to her. And so she was like, we don't see that across most schools. Athletics typically wins out. And so that was a huge proponent with the comments and stuff.
We have a very cultured student body.
Well-rounded.
Yeah, well-rounded. So describe your experience with the school community. So parents, faculty, and staff are respectful of one another. The priorities, programs, and actions of the school are in alignment with the mission. We had really high scores with parents and with faculty. And then students, they participate in a lot of the clubs. I think as a middle school parent, I'm hearing a lot from high school, from the high schools now, and they all say that Holy Comforter kids are the most involved when they get to high school. They're in all the clubs and the sports and fine arts and all the things, and I think that's because of the culture that we have here at Holy Comforter. So these were all fairly good dining services. I'm going to hand this one to you.
Vanessa!
Here we go. Bring back the ice cream.
And so, interestingly enough, we have the president of Flick that's coming today. And so we're constantly evaluating what we're doing and how we're doing it. And things did change because of the pandemic. And we're trying to get back to the way that we were providing food for our kids previously. And what I mean by that is we're starting to now bring the salad bar back. We're being more cognizant of portions, because guess who is answering the middle schoolers, right? And so we have to, and we know they do offer more food to the middle school than they would early learning or lower school, but it is something that we have to consistently be. And then we've offered the panini press back. You guys are proud.
It is huge.
They're panini pressing their cookies.
And the small portion sizes, they would have, when we first opened, they would take 10 cookies. So they're mad that they take 2.
Right.
That's part of it.
But can I just say, the panini press starts in 3rd grade. We don't let kindergartners.
Yes.
Press.
Why not?
Megan Neal to run it for lunch.
I clearly understand.
But this is something that we're continually trying to evaluate. Sometimes the line gets long based on and so we were wanting to make sure that the kids aren't standing in line longer than they need to be to get the food and have the time to be able to enjoy the food. So that's a continual learning process.
I do love that the kids were worried about the cost. I should have that. All right, so faith-based programming, overall positive for parents, worship and chapel services, but opportunities for mission work. Now, I will tell you, we have a special, or a new, not special, special though, a new committee, part of the board for community involvement that I'm actually the chair of. It has been really eye-opening and a little frustrating for me as I've tried to find opportunities for our students outside of school. You know, the agencies are not, as Peter mentioned before, really set up for either our age groups or our number of people. You know, they don't need 250 people showing up from Holy Comforter, you know, to do work. They're not set up for that kind of thing. So it's been a challenge. We've set up a new opportunity with a full summer through St. John's Episcopal School. We've got 2 teams. That information's coming out. We did it last summer. It was a huge hit with our families, and so that information's coming shortly. We're going to offer that again, and then hopefully we'll have another on-campus parent and student opportunity in the fall that we're still working through, but we're trying to expand those opportunities, not just for the students, but also for them to work alongside of their parents, so that you know, we can hopefully open that opportunity up. Same with the faculty and then the students. They seem to be good. The retreats are low. I'm
Right, because they would like to go fun places.
somewhere other than camping.
Well, and I think it's a lot, like, you know, we take them on field trips, and I think, you know, our 6th graders don't necessarily know that we have a big end of the year 8th grade retreat.
Right,
So, you know, again, they're caught between what they know and what they don't know, and like, yes, we'd like to be out of our classroom more doing fun things.
Correct.
So yes, and it's, I mean, we would love to, you know, take them places to do things like retreats, you know, running into the same problem
Yeah.
that you're talking about,
Yeah.
so.
It is
So, yeah.
And just to give a shameless plug, one of the things Amy and I, we teach 8th grade religion, we split them between boys and the girls, and then I'd start with the boys in the beginning of the year, and then we switch in January. And one of the new projects that we took on is we wanted the 8th graders to work together in small groups and decide what local entity they would like to give money to. And one of the things we're introducing, and it'll come to you about Thursday night, lights.
Next week, middle of next week,
Okay.
we're gonna send it all out.
Yep. So we're going to have a new event that will happen in May. That will be for lower school, middle school, and donations that are received or any money that we were able to raise, 100% of those proceeds go to the entity that they voted on yesterday. So they had to do the research, they had to discuss, they had to present. We're trying to teach them to look through philanthropic eyes, right? And I'm a big believer in don't just, you know, I don't want kids to just give money for a dress down day. We were looking always for opportunities for them to experience that, get their hands dirty with it. What does it mean to give back? And so that's just kind of a new tradition that we've started that we're excited about.
And I'm gonna jump in, are you about to say?
Yes, and we had last year, Lisa Butera, our guidance counselor, and Lindsay Cheeseborough started, if you know anything about Beat Week at St. John's, where it's an entire week during the summer, the kids go and serve different places, so it's sort of modeled like that, but to give our middle schoolers an opportunity in the summer to go serve, and it was hugely successful, and the kids loved it. They didn't love riding the little bus. But it really, I mean, this is, you know, one of the things that even before our, you know, SAIS, even before the reaccreditation, everything, we knew, like, we want to do something for our middle schoolers in particular to be able to get outside of themselves and go serve. So there's a couple of weeks in the summer where they, you know, meet here, they have a little, you know, morning session, and then they go and they serve at these places, and the kids, they loved it. And it was just such a neat opportunity, again, to, you know, walk out faith in service to our community.
Even my grumpy teenage boys loved it.
Right, yes, right, it was great.
All right, Vanessa.
All right, it's me. All right, show of hands, who knows what a Net Promoter Score is? Just for a jump in. Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna go through it. This was a question you guys answered that was basically on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Holy Comforter to friends, family, colleagues, whoever it may be? So when they take these scores, it is widely used in the business world. And so in the next slide, I'm going to kind of show you some other Net Promoter Scores from huge companies that you'll recognize and everything. But that is one of the things SAIS does, because this truly gives you a measurable number of how you're doing across your entire program. So we take our promoters, which are 9 and 10, and they take that percentage and they subtract the percentage of detractors. These passives, which you think 7 and 8s are probably pretty good, like, hey, you're doing good. They throw those out. So if anyone answers a 7 and 8, that doesn't even go into your score. So that's kind of a key component that, kind of was shocking when we first did this survey 5-6 years ago. But with that, the score in the end is anywhere from a negative 100 to 100, so it's a 200-point scale. So when you see these, that's really important to know that actually could all go negative. So let's walk through this. So these are some examples. Chick-fil-A. I mean, I think we can all say their customer service is superb. They have a great model. They have a 64. Go down Nike 52, poor Holiday Inn, coming in with green, they're working on it. So you can see that. Uber, we can tell, Starbucks, this came from comparably.com. So this kind of gives you a view before we jump into our Net Promoter Scores.
American must have paid not to have theirs on there.
I know, right? I actually want to go look that up now. We should compare. Yeah, Delta's not terrible, so. All right, so parents. As you see, our Net Promoter Scores is 78. That's a phenomenal score, I think you guys can tell. The median benchmark across those 75 SAIS schools that Peter mentioned was a 59. So we're, high above that. Some things to point out, detractors. We have 0, sorry, I'm right in front of it. We have 0 1 to 3s, which is huge. That doesn't happen, Sherry said. So that's one thing to point out. We have 9 detractors overall out of 311 respondents. That's really great. We have more 10s than 9s. We have more 8s than 7s. So that's what you want to see in passives. We, have more of the 8s. When you look at scores by division, you'll see this across faculty and students. The lower age of the child, the higher the score. It's just how it is. And so, can't wait to show you all students. But all that to say, you're going to do it. So, all that to
happier.
Yes. So it's just a great way for us to get really a pulse and stuff. Again, there's always ways for us to improve, and that's some of the things we'll go. They actually put in narrative comments with these scores. So those are things where you'll see in a second some of the ways that we can still improve this. But again, it was good. Faculty, 72 overall. Median benchmark is a 68. You can kind of see here, again, no detractors in these ranges. 2 here, more 10s and 9s, more 8s and 7s, the same kind of theme across these. And again, Net Promoter Scores you can see are higher. Thing to point out about middle school, 58. There was 0 detractors in that. So that's important to see. It is a lower score. But
Middle school teachers are also like middle schoolers, so.
Yes.
They deal with them
Yes.
all day.
Yes. That's right, yeah.
Right, yes.
And they probably had just facilitated this with the students. They needed to be theirs. Truly, they did.
They're happy too, I promise.
So, they are, but that's the biggest thing. They're not detracting. A lot of them are like 7 and 8. That's great, So just keep that in mind when we look at those scores. All right, students. So funny story about this. We got these back when the 8th graders were in DC, and I just want to point you real fast to the 24. And Peter was like, should we leave them there? All kidding aside, I have an 8th grader. I love them. We'll talk through that score as well. Obviously, they've got some detractors and everything. You can see our 6th and 7th graders' Net Promoter Scores are very good. 24s are overall. 10 is the median, so we're technically killing it in the student category, even though it doesn't feel that way. And so,
Lots of schools are in the negatives.
exactly, lots of schools are in the negatives. And the biggest thing that we took away from this and talking with Sherry, she said, you have a negative there, but when she actually dug into the comments, middle schoolers are literal. So it's like, would you recommend this to a friend? A lot of them were like, well, no, all my friends are already here. So they gave us a lower score.
That's
not my
decision.
Or it's not, it was, or it's not my decision, or I don't know, like their family lives on the other side of town and it would be too far of a drive. I mean, literally, those are what they were. I would say majority were nothing about like, I don't want to be here. And the other side is that our 8th graders are ready to leave. And that's a great thing. That means we've done our job. Or you guys have done your job. So,
And we're ready for them.
or leaving the deeds. But questions on that? Because this one, obviously, the numbers are a little different. Okay. Next one. So these are some comparisons that SAIS pulled for us of schools genuinely just like us. So you can see similar enrollments, all pre-K 3 through 8, 3-year faith-based, similar tuition outside of this one, School C. Some don't, do their students, and so that's why. But the biggest thing is that our response rates were in line, if not higher. Our promoter scores were in line, if not higher. There's only, I think, 2 of the faculty maybe that weren't. So again, in comparison, even though some scores seem, we are doing really well. Benchmarks down here, I mean, you can see. So we have 78 versus 70, 24 versus 5, 72, 74. Faculty's the one. So just to give you kind of comparison. So if any more questions on that, I think that might, there you go. Now we'll get into the comments that related to. Oh, sorry.
Let's go. All right. I will say when we were reading through the narrative comments, it brought me back to being a high school history teacher when there was a comment, well, you're not going to read this anyway. Put that in my I guess, I promise. And we read and we went through every single comment. And so some are positive and some are opportunities, right? So the positives, the areas of noted excellence you have were welcoming, sense of community, thriving, happy kids, faculty nurturing, challenging, safe, and cared for. We also have our core values. The other thing, families of color. One of the things that was when we were able to break down the demographics of this response is sometimes what we have learned are families of color do not feel welcome. One of the things that we're trying to do is to get adults that are of color so that families and students feel welcome, right? And that's important to be cognizant of. And that's something that we're continually working on. Areas of concern, bullying. I would say as an educator, does bullying take place? Yes, I hate that word because I think kids are rude one day. They might be mean. It may lead to a pattern. I will tell you this, when we hear of things, when I say we, administrators, faculty, we're like, is the most important thing that these kids are nice to each other. And those are non-negotiables. And so when something does happen, we are responding like, because that crawls all over us. So that is something just to keep in mind. Areas of concern, discipline. Regarding that, well, what do we do? How do the administrators and the teachers work through that? We involve the guidance counselors. There is a huge team effort anytime that there is an issue. And we want to be overly communicative about those issues and how we're dealing it, and so that the children will learn from that, so that we can bring change. Christian values versus society values. It is it's interesting. Well, aren't we a Christian school? I sometimes hear that. One of the things that you did not see up there when it came to accrediting bodies is we are not accredited by a Christian school organization, and that's on purpose. What I mean by that is, and don't quote me because I'm looking at the camera, we have an academic rigor, and we have benchmarks that we have to strive for through our accreditation. We are not a biblically based curriculum. Other schools choose to do that. We do not choose to do that. It is a part of our experience to offer religious education, to have chapel 3 times a week, to offer that character education. Those are non-negotiable. And I've had some people go, well, I like the whole academic rigor, but my kid, we're not very religious, can we just opt out of that? No, it's part of what we do. So I share that with you as if you have a Christian school organization that's accrediting schools, it's not nearly as rigorous academically and everything else as what we have, if that makes sense. Addressing parent concerns. We can always become better at that. Opportunities, clarification of diversity efforts, shared language, feedback from the survey. This is why we're doing this, and we're going to record this and hopefully record. Sending this out. And then also just offer opportunities. This is one of the things that I'm excited about. Since COVID, we weren't able to come together as a community. I love that Randy McIntosh was here just last week, offering opportunities for us to become better parents. We're going to continue to offer these. This is our, I think we'll have our 6th one, Conversations in the Commons. Next week will be more fun, I promise, about the developmental characteristics of your kids. And then this desire for a high school. How many people want a high school? You all can make that happen.
Next one.
Big dollars on that. You know, and that is something that, you know, when we have a big campus master plan, we know where that would go. We are becoming built out for what our program is for a pre-K 8. And that is something as a board that we will continue to look at, especially as funding opportunities are changing as we sit here. And so that is something that we would, but I will say, we would never just want to put trailers out back and call it a high school. Because what your kids are experiencing for a pre-K 8 is pretty phenomenal, and whatever they're going to experience for 9 through 12 needs to be equally or exceedingly phenomenal. And our faculty, welcoming, safe, well-rounded, caring environment, areas of concern, different perspectives on what it means to be a Christian school. Because you don't have to be an Episcopalian to be a teacher here, right? So we have all different viewpoints and defining really what that means to be an Episcopal school. And again, I think we can do a better job of that. Addressing problems more efficiently, faculty salaries, we strive to pay our teachers 95% of what Leon County is paying. And as you know, Leon County got a big boost in faculty salaries. We are responding appropriately. And we're also looking at how we can make tuition remission benefits even better for our faculty as well. Opportunities, constantly curriculum mapping, going from first to second, second to third. How can we get these lined up? And then opportunities for feedback inclusion and including our teachers in the accreditation process as much as we can, right?
Is there a committee on the board or something that focuses, I mean, we've talked about faculty a lot, and I know you guys are the professional staff and deal with it a lot, but is there specific areas of the board or somewhere that kind of really focus and dive in on those pieces?
There's not a part of the board that focuses on academics, because that's our responsibility.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, you know, the teacher quality, you know, making sure that competitive grades, you know, I know that you guys focus on professional development, those kind of pieces.
So I will present those to the finance committee, and then we will evaluate and look at how we're doing it. But it's, and to put it in a very short sentence, the board is concerned or creating a school for their grandchildren. Peter and everybody else on here is creating the best school for your children. Yeah, and so they're but I always, yes, I am constantly presenting and then getting their influence and, yeah.
I sit on the finance committee, so I can speak to the fact that there's a lot of focus. We went through a whole session on, you know, teacher salaries and financially how we could accommodate that, so it's definitely there's
And
a focus on that.
Plug, I've been here a really long time, and I have to say, like, the commitment to that piece really is extraordinary. And by a long time, I have been here 26 years. So I have a former student in the back. And, you know, it was important when I first started working here, but I would say Holy Cover has done, particularly in the last 10 years, a really extraordinary job of working on making sure our teachers are well cared for in that area.
And I also say the increase in Leon County public school teachers did increase, but what I think that they did not address was also increasing the amount for veteran teachers. So an incoming first-year teacher is going to make the same amount that someone that's been in the classroom for 6, 7, 8 years. To me, that's not fair. So we have an increase of where we're starting, but we were also very appropriately increasing based on the years of experience because we want to recognize that as well.
And I think on an earlier slide, our retention, you know, the number of years that our teachers have been here, the majority, big majority, have been here 5 years or more. So, you know, I think that speaks,
Yep.
you stick around.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, so this year, we didn't just get a flat increase, because we had to recognize those that were here for different types of years. So it was all over the board. A lot of fun, but.
It's math.
Do you want to address the dress code disparity for the girls?
They don't like me asking them about their skirts. And actually, a lot of this has to do with our dress down days. Because, you know, boys just show up in like basketball shorts and t-shirts. And so, you know, girls show up in little Lululemon skirts, which, nope, sorry, not gonna do that. So it's really, you know, I do hassle the girls, but if they would show up in basketball shorts and t-shirts, that would be great too.
Well, and they have very clear guidelines, and they
Yes.
just
And there's
decide
more
they're gonna-
guidelines for girls, because again, you know, more clothing, so, it really, they're not wrong in that I hassle them more, about their dress code, but, you know, it's because there's some things that are appropriate and inappropriate to wear to school, and
And it's
that's what we try to work on.
parent of a middle school girl, I will say, in the Animal Kingdom trip, Lisa Butera was phenomenal about what dress code was for girls, was what it was for boys. I mean, it is very, very fair, and as a parent of middle schooler, I'm like, yeah, no, you can't wear that, I'm sorry. You know, so I mean,
You're not going to the mall.
they do a great job.
So,
And we look at awareness that school may not be as welcoming to certain groups. They're aware of that. Amount of homework their students cost to attend. So again, dress code, focus group, project and test coordination among classes. We don't want to overwhelm them. We want to challenge them, but we never just want to throw them out and go, you got to deal with it with 10 tests on one day. We don't do that. Questions? Comments? All right, well, thank you very, very much for being here this morning. It was, we always enjoy this opportunity to be able to share information with you all.
Thank you.